Hello everyone, welcome to Cleveland. The Mythic Championship season of 2019 gets underway right here. Rich Hagan alongside Maria Bartholdi and Simon Gertzen, Pro Tour champion. We have such a great lineup coming to you over the next 3 days. Let's start with you, Simon. We've got 2 mornings of limited, 2 afternoons of standard. Of the 2 formats, what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to Standard, Rich. I've been playing a ton on Arena, and it's so diverse. You can play almost anything you want. So many good decks, good cards, and I still don't know what is really the best choice for this tournament.
Maria?
Well, I'm looking forward to draft, as I always am. I get so excited for the first draft of the morning here at these Mythic Championships. And, you know, there's so many unique build-around uncommons that we could see the players go after in the draft. Dove Security, Gatebreaker Ram, High Alert, something like that, which makes draft super interesting.
Yeah, and Simon, talking a little bit about limited, there is a sense that often, you know, in mid-season, especially when you're in a lane where there are these guilds and it's a clear color pair and they've got all these gold uncommons that force you into that potentially everyone would be used to the format, everyone would just know what is actually not a lot of options. That hasn't really happened this time. Why not? Why is it still a very diverse draft format?
Yeah, that's a good point, because you would think that there are only 5 archetypes to draft, right? But what's apparently the case is you can draft each of these archetypes in a very different way. You can play it with a lot of creatures, with almost no creatures. You can draft gates. You can draft 3-color decks.
You can have no win conditions.
Well, you should have some way to win the game. No, but for example, why draft Azorius, why draft Orzhov when you can draft Esper instead? So I think this format has a lot more going for it than what appeared on the surface.
All right, well, if you are new to coverage, you are extremely welcome here at our first Mythic Championship of 2019. Maria, let's walk everyone through what's coming over the next 3 days.
All right, let's take a look at the schedule to find out what you'll be watching here on Twitch Friday, which is, of course, today, 3 rounds of booster draft to kick off the morning. So grab your coffee and watch these players draft. Really awesome stuff there. Then, of course, it is standard constructed for the rest of the day. The players bringing their cards from home, playing some standard. Next, on Saturday, same thing. Once again, draft in the morning, standard in the afternoon, and of course, it all comes down to Sunday when we make our cut to the top 8.
Right, but not everyone gets to come back on Saturday. You have to get to 4 wins and 4 losses or better to be allowed back in on Saturday. Conveniently enough, though, across the hall, Magic Fest Cleveland is going on right here. There's a 2,000-player main event to go into tomorrow, so I think there might be some hard luck 3 and 5s making their way just to the next door chamber.
Yeah,
here.
I talked to Joel coming in, Joel Larson, on a flight, and he said, hey, do you know if I scrub out of the main event, I can just go to the GP? And I'm like, yeah, why not?
Absolutely. All right, so that's how the players are going to play across 3 days. But Simon, what are they playing for? Let's take a look at the cold hard cash on offer.
Yeah, first place, $50,000. That is what, of course, everyone here wants to win. But the other finishes are also well rewarded, with $20,000 for second place, $15,000 for the top 4, and $10,000 for the top 8.
Yeah, and everyone gets paid. Just for being here, you get your $500. If you go 0 and 5 and drop and then head next door, that's fine. $500 coming your way. But what about points? Now, points get a little bit complicated here in 2019. Let's show you what players are playing for, because we've sort of got 2 currencies, if you like. There's pro points, which many of you will be familiar with, and those continue to exist through the rest of this season as players level up through the pro club levels and so on. That's why those are still existing, and they're also very relevant for the team series. All the points awarded in the team series continue to be pro points. So when we talk about points on the team series, that's what we mean. But the new currency, if you will, or the reimagining of pro points essentially, are the new Mythic points. And this is the first event of 7 Mythic Championships where those points will be on offer. But as Paul Cheon said yesterday in the preview, look, fundamentally, you can call them Mythic points, you can call them pro points, you can call them handsomeness points, you can call them anything you like. The truth is, it's still about win games of Magic, do well, you get rewarded. So when we talk about points, we'll try and be clear with you, but it can get a little bit confusing. Fundamentally, Mythic points are the new thing in town, and Pro points is what Team Series is all about. So, what we're going to do now is we have a feature drafter, don't we, Maria?
Yes, we do. It is Mike Sigrist. We're going to be watching every pick from every pack from the Channel Fireball member. Brian David Marshall talked to him yesterday about his draft strategy.
I'm here with 3-time Mythic Championship top 8 competitor Mike Sigrist, and yes, that is how it works now. Mike, we're going to be following you through this first draft of Mythic Championship Cleveland. We're going to stay with you, win, lose, or somehow draw throughout the whole thing. How do you feel about having the spotlight shown on you in this new draft format?
I'm excited. I really enjoyed this draft format, and yeah, I'm excited to show people what I can do.
So tell me about how this format is maybe different than like the Guilds of Ravnica draft format. It seems like they should be on some level very similar, right? 5 guilds, a lot of signpost cards. It should be maybe a similar roadmap.
No, it's actually a lot different. In guilds, there was a lot, the difference in power level in the guilds was pretty apparent. And in this one, I think all the guilds are closer. There are some better than others, but you want to just find the open lane and stick with it because you'll get paid off in this format. And like I tried to avoid Selesnya in the last one, and in this one I'm not trying to avoid anything. And there's also a much stronger gate archetype. There's a lot more incentive to be in a multicolored deck than there was in the last format. So there's kind of like a 6 guild.
And when you talk about the guilds being closer together, that means being in the weakest guild, if it's wide open, is sometimes exactly where you want to be, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like you're just going to end up getting, first pick quality cards, on the wheel sometimes if no one else is willing to touch, a certain guild, Rakdos or Zov, whatever. So yeah, I think staying open in this format is much more rewarding than the other one where I wanted to kind of stake my claim in the most dominant guild in the last format, and this one I kind of want to stay open and stay open and then just get rewarded for being open.
So when we're watching you draft, what's a good signal to us that things are going well? Like what are we going to see that says, oh, Mike seems pretty happy with this draft so far?
Well, other than the physical tells, I'll definitely have shaking my head if I'm doing poorly. I think if you see me, getting late, like I said, on guild cards, that's going to be a good sign. If you see me, bouncing between guilds because I'm unsure what guild is open, that's going to be the sign that I'm, struggling. But sometimes I'll just be planning to be 3 or 4 colors, so it'll be fun to watch.
You have an in case of emergency break glass plan in this draft format?
Yeah. I mean, I'm totally comfortable playing, a bunch of colors and just, being like a base green, 4-color deck with some open the gates to fix and just taking whatever card I have to, have a power level equal to my opponents or whatever. So yeah, I'm just gonna try to see what's open, and if that happens to be gates, hopefully, I'll just end up there.
All right, Mike Sigrist, we're gonna watch him all the way through this first draft. We're going to watch him draft. We're going to talk to him about his draft, and we're going to see all 3 rounds of action here, unless somehow he gets a bye, but that would be terrible. So let's fasten our seatbelts, and hopefully it's not too bumpy a ride.
Thanks, BDM. All right, well, that's a look at Mike Sigrist, but who will be around the table with him? And for that, we turn to Rich.
Yeah, so we've conveniently arranged for 7 other human beings to sit down at the table with Mike Sigrist down in our feature match area. So why don't we see if we can head down and show you the scene from there. You're looking at Jack Dobbin. Jack Dobbin, 64% GP win rate. Next to him, Stuart Parnes from Team RIW Hobbies. He's in his 4th Mythic Championship. There's Tom the Boss Ross, Honolulu Top 8 2009. He was a terrific member of the Star City Games team. Francesco Hugini from Italy, the Grand Prix Metz champion of 2017. Next to him is Francisco Sanchez, went 10-6 at Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica from Team Spanish Masters. There's Tiago Saporito from Hararuya Latin, 2 times a 3rd place in a Mythic Championship, both Pro Tours, of course, from Brazil. There's our hero at the table, Mike Sigrist from Channel Fireball, 3 Pro Tour top 8. And the table rounds out with Mitch Tamblin playing in his 12th Mythic Championship, 50% win rate. That is the table. It's very US-centric. We've got a Brazilian, we've got an Italian, we've got Francisco Sanchez from Spanish Masters, 5 American players headlined by Mike Sigrist and Tom Ross Maria.
All right, well, the feature match is ready, and we are ready to go. So let's head on down for draft here at Mythic Championship Cleveland.
Hello there, welcome to the booth here at Mythic Championship Cleveland. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe, joined by Paul Chion. Thanks so much for coming along for coverage of the booster draft here on day 1 early in the morning. Look, the table's set. Let's head on down. It's time for the draft. Hello, welcome back to the booth here in Cleveland. We're here for the Mythic Championship, the first one ever. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Chian, and we are stoked to have you along for the booster draft. This is, of course, probably the most intense part of the entire tournament until you get to Sunday, or at least the last part of Saturday, where the players have put in weeks, months sometimes of preparation, and now they get to sit down and open up those packs. Let's take a look at the table and see where our feature drafter, Mike Sigrist, and you'll see him at the top middle part of your table, where he's sitting in relation to the other players at the table. What names jump out to you? I see Tiago Saporito right there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the person feeding to him in Tiago Saporito. There have been times where these two have been on the same team. And so, Tiago is somebody that I'm looking for. Tom Ross, also on top of that, is somebody that actually had, he might be known for playing, specific constructed decks, but he actually has a very high limited win rate at these Mythic Championships.
All right, let's get into the first pack here for Mike Sigrist, and it looks like he has precognitive perception here and also a Skewer the Critics pulled to the front, as well as an Enraged Ceratok. So 3 very different directions here for Mike.
Right, a lot of powerful options here. But if I know anything about Mike, I think
he's like a little value.
He likes value, so I think he's looking at that precognitive perception. But if you're looking for just very, very good efficient removal, Skewer the Critics is also an option. I think it's probably a choice between those 2 cards if you did have a choice. Enraged Ceratok, while 4 mana 4/4, it's a pretty solid body. It's kind of replaceable, I want to say, because you have, of course, cards like Frenzied Erranks that kind of serve a similar role.
That's right. He does go for the precognitive perception, the most powerful option out of the pack. And as he mentioned before we started the broadcast, he's okay going into any of the guilds, so totally fine pickup. There's Chillbringer right at the front now for him. A super solid common. Most people have it near the top of the common rankings, especially when you're talking about the non-gold cards.
Right, and on top of that, it is a monocolored card, right? So it still gives him more options. If he takes a card like the Chillbringer, he's still leaving himself open to being either Azorius or Simic here. There's a card like the Aeromunculus, which in certain situations you would take over the Chillbringer because, of course, it's 3 mana and he's already starting with the 5 mana card. But I think this early in the draft, you want to just take that Chillbringer and just keep yourself open and read the signals.
Oh, yeah, Chili Boy's good. That card has really performed well. It just feels like there's almost never a situation where it isn't a card you want to cast. Right. It doesn't get you. It can either keep you ahead if you were already ahead, or it can even help stabilize you if you were behind. So he takes a Chillbringer. Now he does have 2 5-mana spells currently. But there's a Summary Judgment and a Tithe Taker as options for him. I like the Judgment here.
Oh yeah, me too. I think what you want to be doing, especially if you're the blue-white deck, it kind of functions as a blue-white skies deck. There's a ton of evasive creatures available, so you really just want to make sure you have access to, cheap, efficient removal. And of course, in blue-white, you don't have access to a lot of removal. So the value of Summary Judgment even goes up more in that archetype.
Yeah, I also didn't notice it, but there's a Spirit of the Spires in the pack as well. A solid uncommon for that flyer stack, but it's just hard to replace cheap, efficient removal, so that's where you got to go.
Right. On top of that, many of the flyers in the Azorius deck already have a lot of toughness. So in certain formats, I could see that +0/+1 effect being extremely important, but not as relevant here.
Yeah. No, my Courier's a 1/5 now, Paul, so I still block with it. Yeah. This is interesting. A Simic Ascendancy has found its way to Sigrist here in this pack. There's also some decent cards. The Impassioned Order is a playable, but it doesn't really go much further than that. And an Angelic Exaltation, which in the right deck can be quite powerful. Something that he might want to look at. But boy, Simic Ascendancy, maybe a signal here, Paul.
Right. He is seeing it fairly late here. And again, Mike Sigrist, just one of those players where he knows what the best cards are, and he knows how to read these signals, and he is not afraid to just kind of shift gears and move into another color. Not only that, you can just go through. Wow. Okay.
Lawmage's
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. That is the premier gold common for the Azorius deck.
Excellent pickup here for Sigrist, and he can't slam that one quickly enough. And yeah, he's given us a little like, well, I'm a little concerned, but inside he's like, boom,
right.
Ship it. Also, one thing to really consider here, Paul, is that in this set, drafting 3 colors is very common. We call them the wedges. You can kind of take one of these 3-color combos that have gates available to them in both sides, and Lawmage's Binding fits perfectly into either one of these. You'll splash it in a Simic deck, no problem.
Right, and on top of that, I also feel like this format is a little bit slower than Guilds of Ravnica because you don't have a guild that's so punishing like the Boros Guild in Guilds. So you can draft a slightly slower deck, go into 3 colors, take more gates, and just kind of try to go for a more powerful package.
Looks like he's going to go for a Resolute Watchdog here with this pick, a solid little pickup for these types of decks. It pulls its weight, right? I mean, it just does a good job holding the ground early, and it is really annoying late when you're trying to chip in with flyers, and they're just like, look, you're going to need 2 removal spells to kill my Chillbringer or something not even that great.
Right.
All right, now we're starting to get into sort of the mid-late part of the pack here, but there's a few playables. There's a Thought Collapse in this pack, and Concordia Pegasus not really pulling its weight in this format super much, but it still counts as a playable.
Right. The thing is, it is a curve filler.
Yeah.
It does give you an option for 2 mana. The thing is, in the blue-white deck, you do have a lot of different options at 2. You have the Impassioned Order, the Concordia Pegasus, and even the Fairy Duelist. So looks like Mike going for the counterspell here in Thought Collapse.
Yeah, so that's a fine pickup for him. There's another one there and another Concordia Pegasus. He could also take a 10th District. No, never mind. He's not even bothering with it.
So if you notice here, he had that exact same pick. A pick between a Thought Collapse and a Concordia Pegasus. This time around, he did choose to go for the Pegasus because oftentimes you don't want to be playing multiple counterspells in your limited decks.
That's right. Also, one thing that is of note here when you are Azorius is there's High Alert. It does exist. You don't always get one. It's an uncommon. But when you do, you're kind of happy to have a Concordia Pegasus on your side in your pool where you might or might not run it in a normal deck. Here's a second Thought Collapse, but I kind of like that Azorius Locket here for Mike.
Yeah, I think both are reasonable options, but it looks like Mike's just going for the Thought Collapse. There are lots of very powerful rares in the format, and just making sure you have access to additional counterspells to deal with cards like Ethereal Absolution, for example, is
Don't
pretty
even
important.
say that around me, Paul. I get like the shudders when you say that. Here's an interesting one, another copy of Screaming Shield. He actually was pondering one of those about 3 picks ago. This is a card that you can bring in out of the sideboard against these slow decks, and you can actually really do it also. He has 2 Thought Collapse. I'm just saying, like maybe
3 Thought Collapse.
Uh-oh. He could just have a mill deck.
Right.
It is interesting because, while the Screaming Shield does demand that you play a full card dedicated to it, it doesn't do a whole lot otherwise. Thought Collapse is just a playable common in this set, and it actually does give you an alternate win condition if you find yourself in a deck that's trying to stall out as well as you.
Yeah, the thing is, this isn't one of your classic limited formats where just like many of the decks are just trying to kill you by attacking. There are just like slower, more controlling decks. And in those matchups, for example, the Gate deck tends to be slower, tends to have less creatures. And in those types of matchups, cards like Screaming Shield can just break open kind of stalemates.
Yeah. It is brutal when you mill their Colossus, though.
Oh, yeah.
It feels so bad.
Or if you mill them and then they just get it back with Dead Revels, get 2 creatures back with Dead Revels.
Totally. 10th District Veteran actually came back there for Mike. But yeah, he's kind of filling out this deck with some stuff in the later part of the pack that isn't going to be mega impactful for him. But boy, I like where this went. He started off, and he even gets to play the rare that he opened, which of course is something that doesn't always happen. He did pick up an Eyes Everywhere that he could perhaps use maybe out of the sideboard if he feels that his opponent can't interact or pay for it himself. And then we also saw Swirling Torrent, which interestingly, I don't think the Azorius deck like this necessarily wants unless it is that full Flyers version that you mentioned.
Right.
Which I don't think he is currently, right? With
Yeah.
the 3 Thought Collapse and the Law Mage's Binding, it looks like he's building a more controlling version of the deck. The Precognitive Perception as well, also another incentive for him to prolong the game.
Yeah, so Mike Sigrist, his draft started out fairly strong, but it looked like the picks kind of died down after that Law Mage's Binding.
Yeah.
He really didn't have too many choices afterwards that he's really happy with playing. I mean, he's got that Screaming Shield, but it's not one of those cards you want to put at the top of your list of cards that you want to be playing early on. So, hopefully, given the signals that he passed in the first pack, he plays well with his neighbor and gets kind of hooked up in that second pack.
So I'm curious to see if Mike considers the mill plan something that he could actually legitimately go for. He is quite creature light at this point. He really didn't pick up many creatures, so he's going to want to pick up some more of those, especially if he wants to get that Screaming Shield going. But either way, a fine start for Mike's draft here, and he's really hoping that he did a good enough job cutting those cards going to the left that he can find himself some real nice stuff. Well, look at that right in the front. Anything good at the back? No, nothing insane. But the Azorius Night Arbiter is a good pickup. And then in the middle of the pack, yeah, there it is, a Sphinx's Insight pulled to the front as well, which is fine.
It's a fine card,
Yeah.
but Mike is most certainly going to be taking this Knight Arbiter. It's just a fantastic body, plays offense and defense, and is just a great, great finisher for the Azorius deck.
Yeah, you know, where are you at right now, Paul, on Mike's chances to actually play that Simic Ascendancy? I mean, how is it as a splash?
It looks like it's going to be very, very difficult because currently Mike has 0 Guild Gates in his deck, so I don't think he's going to have the mana. I mean, of course, things can change very rapidly. You know, you could have a draft where I've had drafts where I'm like, man, I really, really need gates, and then out of nowhere you just get 3 on-color gates at the end.
That's true.
So stuff like that can happen, but currently, if I'm Mike, I'm not actively looking for something like, wow.
Sphinx of Foresight here for Sigrist, and he gets past it.
Oh my
so,
goodness.
Well,
And
we
that's gotta
know
be
that the player on his left's not some blue.
Yeah, that is an amazing sign because Mike now knows if there's going to be any reasonable blue cards from the left, he's going to get those cards.
I just got chills, Paul. Like seriously, when you first pick a double blue card out of the first pack and get shipped to Sphinx of Foresight, you're just like, ooh,
yeah, wow,
doing
Sphinx
it.
of Foresight.
That card is a bomb. Really
card
excellent
does
cards.
A lot of work.
Yeah, and don't underestimate that first clause, by the way. You know, smoothing out your draw in the beginning of the game and making sure that your mulligans hurt a little less or that you never have to
Right.
is really powerful. And then, of course, you know, you're just getting an extremely efficient creature, a 4/4 flyer
Yeah.
for 4 mana with upside, too.
Right. So kind of the intention for this card was, you know, with that mode on top, maybe it could be a consideration for a standard card.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Right?
what were you thinking with this?
but then you have this limit because in limited in constructed a 4-mana 4/4 flyer isn't especially powerful,
acceptable,
right?
yeah.
It's fine. But then in limited, your opponent shows you that it's in your hand and you know a 4-mana 4/4 flyer is coming.
It reminded
on
me
top
of
this guy.
Tetsamok. It's like, here's some bad news.
Right. I
At
would
least
say it's a little more beatable than Tetsamok.
Agreed. Oh, I only said it reminded me. It looks like Archway Angel is going to be the pickup for Sigrist here. He does have. I lied. It is Tome of the Guild
Look at
pack that he picked
this.
up. So this is interesting because he actually doesn't have that many gold cards right now. He's got the Binding, the Knight Arbiter, but
I respect this pick.
Yeah,
though.
I do
I'm
too.
excited for this pick.
there's a gold card.
Oh,
a
here we
Senate
go.
Griffin, but he could take the Senate Courier if he'd like. Ooh, a Simic Guildgate. All right, the first test.
It's funny because since he took that tome, he might be inclined to take that Griffin because it will draw him the card, but he might also be concerned about his mana curve, and the Senate Courier is the perfect defensive creature for his deck.
It really is.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the discipline pick here from Mike. This is, not a particularly powerful card, but as you said, it just fits perfectly with everything he's doing. He needs a few of these. I mean, this deck just requires a few Senate Couriers to kind of go.
Especially when you're just trying to take over the late game with cards like that tome and also the precognitive perception.
Yep, and now he's going to pick up a Fairy Duelist, but boy, I got to tell you here, Paul, look at this pack. Oof. Yeah, he's actually considering cutting a card, but I think he's just going to take the Duelist.
Yeah, I don't think that's the school of limited thought that Mike Sigrist is from. I think he's going to be taking this Fairy Duelist, but a little bit sad that he has to pass that Firewheeler.
Yeah, the Rakdos Firewheeler, really powerful on that. We call those, you call those the CCDD cards,
Right.
and that is one of the better ones. It's almost always a 2-for-1. The incidental damage to the opponent matters in that archetype. Like if this was in a blue-white card, it wouldn't matter. Oh, hello, another Law Mage's Binding, though. So Signal's getting a little bit interesting here. That last pack had very little, only one pickable card for Sigrist at all in his colors, and now he's picking up, probably his third best card.
Yeah, I mean, given that he did get past that Sphinx of Foresight, Mike can rule out that the person passing to him in pack 2 is blue, right?
Yeah,
so
for
he's
sure.
He's going to see a lot of those cards, and now that you see the binding, Azorius is wide open from this side.
Which is great for
right,
Sigrist.
absolutely.
Wow. My jealousy meter is steadily growing here.
So just based on the picks that I've seen, it looks like the person passing to him currently is probably in a Gruul deck.
Yeah, I agree. This is interesting because Shimmer of Possibility, sure, it's playable, but you often don't find a slot for it.
Right.
But Repudiate, Replicate, man, Replicate's good. That card
Replicate
is excellent.
good. He did pick up some mana fixing in the tome.
He wants gold cards. Oh, Mr. Discipline here. Look at this. He says, I have children now. I'm going to take the Shimmer of Possibility. So Sigrist is going to stick with just Azorius for now. It looks like that splash of the Simic Ascendancy is looking less and less likely. Nothing good for him here. He could take a Quench.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, Arrester's Zeal, not really the type of card you want
Do you think
in your
he'll cut
flyer deck.
Sagittarius? Yeah, he's cutting Sagittarius Volley. Look, those other two cards are such fringe playables. They're not even that good, and that card's good against him. And this is pod play.
Not only that, I mean, this could just be a reasonable sideboard option if Mike does pick up enough mana fixing to be able to have this as an option, because if you are playing against either an Orzhov or an Azorius deck, this is going to have plenty of targets. And then if you can also just pick off a random Spirit token on top of that, that's just a lot of value.
Here's Sphinx's Insight now. Another gold card in his guild. Perfectly playable, although when I first read it, I think I would be playing it. I thought I would be playing it a little more often than I actually do, but I still like it. It's still fine.
Right.
I'm really curious to see if he plays that Tome. Like, that's the
Tome
card
with a
to
guild
me.
pack with this, draw 3.
You're just like,
oh, there's another one.
Wow, another one. Hello. What else does he have? A possibility for a Clear the Mind. Though I like this pick from Mike for sure. This is not the Clear the Mind deck. He isn't doing that plan. He doesn't need to dedicate a pick to a card like that.
But if the game goes late, I mean, I have to say, things should favor Mike Sigrist. He's got 2 copies of Sphinx's Insight. He's got the Tome of the Guild Pact and the Precognitive Perception in his deck. So he's just going to be up so many cards against his opponent if the games do kind of draw it long.
Yeah, he's just going to randomly take a Sylvan Brush Strider. Nothing for his deck there at all. Just this year's Portal, not playable.
I would love to see a gate here as an option, but it looks like players are valuing them highly, and you're just not going to see gates this late in packs.
No. Scuttlegator was the pickup there, and you know what? He could play it. You only need blue mana for it. It's unlikely, I would say, but he could. 3 red cards left in the pack. He's just going to take one of them, and we are winding down Pack 2 here at Mythic Championship 1 from Cleveland. If you're just joining us, welcome. It's great to have you along. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon here in the booth, and we're watching Mike Sigrist, who's in the MPL, and he plays for Team Channel Fireball, and he is just winding down the second pack of his draft, and I got to say, he found his lane.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean, that's the goal here in RNA, is to say, I want to be in the guild that's open, and he did it. So perfect spot here for Sigrist.
Yeah. I mean, he did a really good job of shutting off the Azorius guild so that he got all the good payoff cards in Pack 2. Now it's just a question of whether or not it was actually open from the right side, and if he still gets those cards in Pack 3. But Pack 2 was fantastic for Mike. And he does want to build on that, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's shaping up nicely. He's got lots of ways to draw cards. He's got the evasion, and he's got a bomb on top of that.
Hard to complain from that position.
But it looks like, at least in terms of curve, he could still use a few more early drops to kind of, put those defenses up. Again, going back to the pick of the Senate Courier, I think that was a really, really big pick, really important for his deck.
And the difference between him having one of those and 0 of those right now is significant.
Absolutely.
Like, if he was looking at this pile and going, I have none of them, he would be in kind of desperate. Like, he would have to really start making those curve-based picks. He's still going to be in a similar position in the third pack, but that was a good disciplined pick from Mike.
I want to see this. I'm just very curious about that Tome with the Guild. How many gold cards do we have right now? We have 2 Law Mage's Bindings and 2 Sphinx's Insights.
2 Insights, Azorius Knight Arbiter.
Okay, that's 5.
Yeah, he does have Scuttlegator too, which does trigger it, though. Again, I don't think that he's super
Right, so given that he's got 5 here, it's pretty likely that he's going to get like 2 to 3, maybe 2 or 3 more. And once you're at around 7 or 8, that's probably good enough.
It's probably good enough. I mean, the interesting thing to me is that if he's already running 2 Sphinx's Insight,
does he
can
need
really
more?
afford to run another card that doesn't affect the board?
Right.
And probably won't.
Unless
the incredible discipline that Mike has shown so far in this draft.
Unless he does choose to maybe splash, because it does help you in the late game for something like that on top of it.
Does anyone have any issues with their third pack? With that, please pick up your pack. You have 40 seconds.
All right, here we go. Pack 3. What do we have?
Let's see. He's got a Duelist pulled to the front. Another Archway Angel, though. He's really not heavy on
He's got
gates
no
right
gates.
now. Oh, no. This is kind of a disaster.
Oh, yeah. This was a miss, I want to say.
Yeah, like, is he going to take a Azorius Guildgate out of this pack?
He might have to, because the thing is, if you just notice how the draft has been shaping up, he has not seen gates.
No.
After I want to say pick 6 or 7, you just don't see any gates left in the pack.
No.
I think just all of these seasoned players just know that it's really, really important to get these gates, because in this format, you're not really going to have a shortage of playables in your deck. So it's really important to make sure you have the proper mana fixing. And in a lot of situations, Archway Angel is something that I would be happy having in my deck. But given that it's pack 3 and Mike has 0 gates, it's not really a card you want to play if you only have like 1 gate in your deck.
That's right.
So yeah, that's got to be a truly bad feeling. First picking an Azorius Guildgate in pack number 3.
Wow.
Oh,
Boy,
man.
and now he's got Code of Constraint, a fine playable. I don't think he wants Verity Circle here.
Yeah, and final payment, if you had reasonable fixing, would be a card to consider to splash. But totally fine Code of Constraint here to put into his deck.
But I agree with, totally fine, right?
Right.
We're not talking, last time he was getting shipped some really nice stuff, and here it's going to be like, okay, a fine playable for my deck. Interesting, he has actually pulled
Okay.
final payment up. Is he considering? Look, the Esper color trio is a very commonly played trio in this format. In fact, it happens to be my favorite archetype. I think it's the best archetype you can get, but it is a little late in the game,
Right.
and as you said, the gates weren't flowing. So, Mike, once again, we're seeing discipline from him, and he's just going to take the Code of Constraint. What did you see? Ooh, how about
wow.
Mortify? Wow.
That is a perf card, especially with the tome on top of that. There was a Guardian Project.
Oh,
as
I do
well.
see it now, yeah.
But that's not really the type of effect that he
Yeah.
wants for his
No.
deck.
And he doesn't have that many creatures either. This
Right.
is really tough because the only real pick is Mortify, but the same thing applies to the final payment last time. He
Right.
doesn't actually have the ability to cast it reliably at this
Right.
point.
But in the last pack, he actually had a
Oop,
totally
little nervous there. You see that? He's like things were going good.
Right.
Now he's gonna start chewing on his nails a little.
in the last pack, he actually had a reasonable card that he would always main deck in the Code of Constraint when he had to choose between that and the final payment.
Yeah.
Here, first of all, Mortify is significantly stronger than final payment, and there was not really a great card for his color combination.
Absolutely.
There.
Wow, another Law Mage's Binding here for Mike, and he quickly thumbs through the last, and yes, he would love that Orzhov Guildgate, but you just can't cast
Yeah,
a binding
you
or pass a
you
binding.
cannot pass up on a Law Mage's Binding,
No.
but he is kind of crossing his fingers and really hoping to pick up an Azorius or even an Orzhov Guildgate to be able to hopefully splash that Mortify.
Yeah, and you mentioned how good Mortify is. It is one of the best uncommons in the set, full stop. It is fantastic. It gives you access to answers to some of the really pesky enchantments that you can lose to
Right.
in this format. There are a lot of playable enchantments like Law Mage's Binding that you can hit, but beyond that, there's other ones that just outright win you the game, like Ethereal Absolution.
Yeah.
Sometimes Simic Ascendancy can be a problem for decks like this if
Even
they
a
can
high
stick
alert.
it.
There's
High
a
alert.
lot of builder,
Totally.
and I've also been valued out by people playing Dovin's Acuity. So there's just a lot
Yep.
of very powerful enchantments.
Yeah.
So the fact that it does, of course, just full stop kill a creature, but also get those pesky enchantments does increase its value.
I really like Sky Tether here. If I'm sitting in Mike's seat, yes, there's another Sphinx's Insight, but the third one is really losing value. The second one is questionable already if you're going to play it or not. And here, a Sky Tether, a cheap way to just say, Rakdos, you don't get Spectacle. Or,
Right.
if Gruul plays a 5/5, you're just like, stop, right? Because you usually win in the air anyway with these decks. So pegging something down on the ground where it can't jump is good.
I'm not sure if he's going to
Ooh.
take the second tome of the Guild Pact here.
Yeah, but the Benthic Biomancer looks like a nice little early play.
Right.
And-
He's
Oh,
got it.
Please do it, Mike. Just do one cool thing. Come on, buddy.
He already took the first one. That was already pretty cool.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to play it. And this one would actually require him to take it over something quite good, which is the Biomancer. Again,
Right.
Biomancer's not amazing. Like, that is a one-shot effect that leaves you with the grand total of 2 power and 2 toughness. It is not amazing, but you know what? Looting's really good. Like,
Absolutely.
even once, it's really good. And he needs relevant early play, so I like that pickup there for Mike.
You have 20 seconds.
Is that a Frenzied Earrings?
Chat wanted him to take the shiny one, of course.
Wow, that is an extremely late Frenzied
Jeez,
Earrings.
No kidding. Somebody's going to be happy to get that. But speaking of happy, hey, that second Senate Courier, he'll take it. Easy pickup there for Sigrist.
5 seconds.
His deck's really good.
Yeah.
Like, let's not, we're getting in the weeds about the things that we want to see or the little picks, but like that's 3 Law Mage's Binding. Like,
Right.
that
Along with the
doesn't
Senate
usually
Couriers.
happen.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm maybe slightly concerned, but it's not a big. Wow.
Oh, a
Never mind.
Dovin's
Let's just
Acuity.
talk about this pack.
Look at this. So he could take the Senate Courier, of course, but now you know exactly what's happening. Mike is thinking, how many instants do I actually have in my deck? And he has plenty.
Yeah, he's again the double Sphinx's Insight with the Dovin's Acuity. That's just gonna go so far.
Yeah.
He already though has lots of ways to draw cards, but
Yes.
Man, Dovin's Acuity, a lot of value here.
So good, yeah. And the thing to remember with Dovin's Acuity is that it is not disinformation campaign in the sense that you can expect to trigger it turn after turn after turn. What you're actually trying to do is just say, can I get some extra value? Can I draw, say, 2 or 3 extra cards over the course of the game with this and buffer my life total? And if you can do that, then it's usually worth it to put in your deck. And the ceiling goes much higher. You know, sometimes you can just kind of recur things.
Yeah,
that get
absolutely.
stupid,
If I just bounce it once and replay it, I'm pretty happy.
You're
I
ahead.
feel like I've done it.
Yeah. You gain 4 life, you're up a card. Like, that's pretty good.
5 seconds.
Now, are we going to see, by the way, Gruul Beastmaster? Geez, Gruul
Yeah,
is
it,
open.
it looks like Gruul is pretty open.
Yeah, he took the Prowling Caracal, and this is not a card that Mike really cares about particularly, but he does need early play, so it might make the
And
cut, although
look
I'd
at
be
that, too.
surprised.
There's just a 3-mana 3/3 still left in the pack here. So yeah, Gruul looks like it was one of the open guilds to beat. But again, Mike Sigrist deck, very, very strong here.
And I think it's really good against Gruul as well. Like,
Right.
if his opponent is like, hey, look, I have a 4-mana creature, Mike's like, Slimebind. Now, that's a really nice pickup for Mike because while Slimebind, for many people, isn't a super early pick, although I will say for me, I do pick it actually quite early. I really, really like an index like this. Again, he has been wanting to have these early interactions. There's that Sphinx's Insight, but he doesn't want the third one probably.
Right.
But anyway, early interaction with creatures just to make sure that you stay alive. Slimebind is perfect for that. So
Yeah, I
really
mean,
nice
it's
pickup.
basically serving kind of the same function as that Sky Tether that he picked up earlier in the draft.
Exactly.
But you can never really have too much of that, especially in Mike's deck where he just has so many ways to draw cards.
Yes.
All he wants to do is just slap on Sky Tethers and Slimebinds and creatures, get ahead on cards, and eventually just win with some of his evasive creatures. Like, I could see, I mean, his games are going to go long.
Yes.
And I can just imagine him just winning games with Senate Couriers and the Arbiter.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, his best win condition is the Sphinx, his 4/4 flyer.
Right.
But that won't necessarily survive. It's also like, I think he's got 2 good creatures, right? Like
He's got
the
a-
Night Arbiter.
with like more than 2 power.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like 2 creatures that if you're sitting there with like a Mortify, right? You're like, okay, finally, like I'll target that. Because if they play a bunch of Senate Couriers, you're like, well, what am I? I'm not killing that, right? But, you know, so that's kind of interesting. And then the other thing to keep in mind is, you know, Mike will be playing some number of Thought Collapse. He's got 3 in his pile, and he could play 1, 2, or 3 of them. I don't think he'll play 0. And that's interesting as well because, look, if the game goes long enough, you can just win by decking your opponent. You can just say, I've countered 2 of your spells. You've got 6 more cards in your graveyard than I do, and I'm just going to sit here and just win the game. Now, the one catch with that when it comes to Sigrist's deck is that he has a lot of card draw in his deck, and he might still be down on cards.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if Mike actually chooses to play the Screaming Shield in his deck as an additional way to kind of close out games.
Wouldn't be
Once he's
shocked.
so the thing is, you can afford to play a card like. Oftentimes, that kind of card is a card that kind of puts you behind on cards, right? But he has so much card draw that might be the type of effect he needs to close out games.
That's right. Well, good stuff for Mike Sigrist. He is going to go start building his deck. We will be having a word with him later on to ask him and walk through the whole draft with Simon. Of course, we get to cover another drafter, and we're going to get all of that with Rich at the news desk. But first, these messages.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the news desk here at Mythic Championship Cleveland. Rich Hagan, your host here. We are moments away from winding through our second draft of the morning. From the same pod as Mike Sigrist, it's going to be Tom the Boss Ross. Worked inside R&D for a while. Many of you know him from the independent circuit, a complete monster and a terrific player. And we're going to see how he gets on. Pro Tour top 8 in Honolulu in 2009 was his best finish. Tons of great features coming up as well. After we do that, we're going to introduce you to the last Pro Tour champion. That's Andrew Ellenbogen, of course. And after round 1, Raf Levy will be here with me at the news desk because he has a very, very special milestone this weekend. Behind me, the players just standing up. That means they're about to go and start their build, which means it's time for our second drafter of the morning. Every pick, every pack. Here's Tom, the Boss Ross.